I stood in my new driveway, keys slipping through my fingers as I stared at the bold red sold sign in front of 47 Apple Street. Just next door stood my former home of 15 years, unchanged, as if my world hadn't been ripped apart just days ago. Caleb's words still rang in my ears. "You need to move out, Elena. Poppy's moving in this weekend. My name is Elena, and this is how I chose to handle my husband's betrayal." "Mom!" Avril's voice was soft but urgent. My 16-year-old daughter stood beside me, her eyes swollen from crying. "Dad's watching from the window." I didn't turn around. "Let him watch." She hesitated before whispering, "Does he know you bought this house?" A flicker of something close to admiration crept into her voice. "Not yet." I smiled, satisfaction settling deep in my chest. "But he will soon enough." Carol, my realtor, approached with a cheerful energy. "Everything's ready, Elena. The house is spotless. Want to take a look inside?" I nodded, squeezing Avril's hand. The front door swung open with a smooth click, revealing gleaming hardwood floors and tall windows flooding the space with golden afternoon light. From the living room, I had an uninterrupted view of my old house, my marriage's grave marker. "This is actually brilliant," Avril said, running her fingers along the kitchen counter. "You can see everything from here." "Mrs. Morris?" A deep voice called from the doorway. Kirk, my longtime neighbor, stepped inside, toolbox in hand. "Thought you might need help setting up security cameras." I hadn't even asked yet. "Kirk, you're a lifesaver." "Least I can do." "The whole neighborhood's talking about Caleb's stunt." He shook his head. "Can't say I blame them. Let them talk." I lifted my chin. "I'm done pretending." The doorbell rang again. This time it was John, a colleague from work, balancing a bottle of wine and a bag of Chinese takeout. "Housewarming party," she announced with a grin. "Mom." Avril suddenly grabbed my arm, her voice tight. "Dad's coming over." Sure enough, Caleb stormed across the lawn, his face red with anger. I stepped outside before he could reach the porch. "What the hell is this?" He gestured furiously at the house. "You bought this place?" "Problem?" I kept my voice level, fully aware of the nosy neighbors watching from their windows. Kirk stood just inside, arms crossed. "You were supposed to move across town, not..." He exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his graying hair. "This is harassment." A sharp laugh escaped me. "Harassment? That's rich, coming from the man who moved his mistress into our home and gave me 48 hours to pack up my life. You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No, Caleb." I stepped closer, my voice low and firm. "I'm making it a lesson. You wanted me gone, but you never said how far. Now you get a front row seat to watch me rebuild, right next door." "Mom!" Avril called from inside. "Where do you want the dining room table?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "She's helping you move in?" She made that choice herself. I turned on my heel. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have unpacking to do." "This isn't over, Elena." I smirked. "For once, Caleb, you're absolutely right." Then, I shut the door in his face. Inside, John poured wine while Kirk installed the first security camera. Avril had already claimed the bright upstairs bedroom as her own. "Did you see his face?" John handed me a glass. "Priceless." "He's calling Poppy," Avril reported from the window. "She looks furious." I joined her, watching as the 20-something blonde flailed her arms inside my old kitchen. The same kitchen where I had once cooked meals, helped with homework, built a life Caleb had tossed away for a younger model. You know what the best part is? I took a slow sip of wine. My new bedroom window looks directly into theirs. Kirk chuckled from his ladder. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "I have to ask," John mused, settling onto a moving box. "How did you buy this place so fast?" A knowing smile tugged at my lips. The separate account I had quietly built throughout my marriage, the one Caleb had no idea existed, had finally served its purpose. Let's just say I always believed in having a backup plan. As the evening wore on, neighbors stopped by with food, tools, and encouragement. Each knock at the door felt like another small victory. Through the window, I watched Caleb and Poppy arguing in the driveway, their voices escalating. "You said she'd leave quietly," Poppy screeched. "This isn't what I signed up for." I turned away from the window, surveying my new home, the empty rooms, the fresh possibilities. For the first time since Caleb's betrayal, I felt something unexpected. Power. "Mom!" Avril wrapped her arms around me. "I'm proud of you." I squeezed her hands, watching the last light of the day fade beyond the trees. "This is just the beginning, sweetheart." 2 weeks later, I discovered something amusing. Poppy's tantrums made for excellent background noise while working. "You need to fire that landscaper." Her shrill complaint drifted through my open window. "He's ruining everything." I smirked, adding another paragraph to my consultancy pitch. The landscaper, who had maintained both properties for years, had already quit. Apparently, Poppy had demanded he rip up the garden because the flowers weren't Instagram-worthy. My phone buzzed. "John, tell me you're still coming to the conference." "I don't know, John. It feels too soon." "No, it doesn't." Her tone was firm. "You spent 17 years running Caleb's business, handling his contacts and making him look good. Now it's your turn." A loud crash cut her off. I glanced outside just in time to see Poppy throwing Caleb's golf clubs onto the driveway. "Hold on," I told John, grinning. "Morning entertainment is getting good. Those clubs cost more than your car." Caleb shouted, rushing outside in his bathrobe. "Then maybe you shouldn't have used them to cheat on your wife." Poppy screamed. "Oh wait, that was me." I leaned back in my chair, laughing. This was going to be fun. "John, you wouldn't believe what's happening. Focus, Elena, the conference, you're pitching your consultancy idea next week." The door chimed and Avril walked in, dropping her school bag. "Dad's golf clubs are all over the driveway," she announced, heading straight for my fridge. I see that I turned back to my phone. "Okay, John, I'll do it, but you're helping me prepare. I'll book tomorrow afternoon. We'll meet at that new cafe downtown." After hanging up, I joined Avril at the kitchen counter. She was doing homework, deliberately facing away from the window where Caleb was now gathering his scattered golf clubs. "You okay, sweetie?" She shrugged. "Poppy tried to ground me yesterday. What, Dad? Shut it down quick." But Avril picked at her sandwich. "She keeps trying to act like she's my mom or something. It's weird." The doorbell rang. Kirk stood there with a stack of mail. "Wrong delivery again," he said, handing it over. "Though you might want to see this one on top was a credit card bill addressed to Caleb. I shouldn't have opened it, but curiosity won." My eyes widened at the charges. "Designer boutiques, spa treatments, jewelry stores." That bad? Kirk raised an eyebrow. "Let's just say Poppy's been busy." I handed him the bill. "Caleb is in for a shock when this arrives." "Mom," Avril called from inside. "John's here." John burst in with her laptop and a determined expression. "Conference prep starts now, Kirk. You're our test audience for the next 2 hours." We refined my presentation. Years of watching Caleb pitch to clients had taught me what worked and what didn't, but this was different. This was mine. "You're a natural," Kirk said after my third runner. "Caleb really had no idea you were this capable." He never asked. I closed my laptop. He was too busy taking credit for my suggestions to notice where they came from. A door slammed. Next door followed by raised voices. Avril sighed, putting in her earphones. "I can't live like this." Poppy's voice carried clearly. "This house is stuck in the last century. We need to renovate everything." John rolled her eyes. "How long before she drives him completely crazy?" "Not long enough," I replied just as my phone pinged with a text from Caleb. "Need to talk about Avril's college fund." It read, "Can we meet?" I showed the message to John, who snorted. He's realizing managing money isn't as easy as he thought. Mom Avril had removed her earphones. "Can I stay here tonight? They're fighting again." Of course, sweetie, I texted Caleb back. "Talk to your financial advisor. I'm busy preparing for a business conference." His reply was immediate. "What conference should we tell him?" John grinned. "Mr. Newsley let him Wonder I closed my phone. Right now I need to focus on my presentation. The conference could change. Everything. Kirk stood to leave. Need any more help practicing? Actually, I glanced at my notes. Could you all come back tomorrow? I want to nail this perfectly. As my friends left, I stood at my window watching Caleb pace in his study. He looked stressed, disheveled. Nothing like the confident man who told me to leave 2 weeks ago. Avril appeared beside me. Dad seems lost lately. He is lost. I put my arm around her. He just doesn't know it yet. Upstairs, Poppy was visible in their bedroom, throwing clothes around and yelling into her phone. The perfect view of their chaos reminded me daily that I'd made the right choice. I turned back to my laptop, where my presentation waited. Time to show them what I can really do. The first signs of real trouble next door appeared on a Tuesday morning. I was enjoying my coffee on the porch when Caleb's Mercedes screeched out of the driveway, leaving Poppy screaming on the front lawn in her silk robe. You can't just leave. We have an appointment with the interior designer. My doorbell rang. Avril stood there, school bag in hand, looking exhausted. They've been fighting since 4 a.m. Come in, sweetie, I'll make you breakfast. As I scrambled eggs, Avril slumped at my kitchen counter. Poppy maxed out Dad's credit cards, all of them. All of them. I nearly dropped the spatula. Yeah, he found out when his card got declined at dinner last night. Avril picked at her eggs. She said it was his fault for not warning her about spending limits. The front door opened, and John walked in waving a newspaper. Have you seen this? She spread the business section on my counter there. It was Caleb's company had lost 3 major clients in the past month, apparently. John lowered her voice, glancing at Avril. He's been missing meetings and showing up unprepared. I thought of all the times I'd prepared his presentations, organized his schedule, and reminded him of important details. A task Poppy clearly wasn't handling. Mom, Avril pushed away her plate. Poppy's coming over. Sure enough, angry knocking rattled my front door. I opened it to find Poppy still in her robe, makeup smeared. This is all your fault. She jabbed a finger at me. You're sabotaging us. I haven't done anything, I replied calmly, except watch. Caleb is falling apart. The house is a mess. Nothing works right. Sounds like a you problem. I started to close the door, but she stuck her foot in. You need to help fix this, she demanded. Tell me how you managed everything. I laughed. Weren't you supposed to be an upgrade? Figure it out yourself. The door clicked shut on her shocked face. Through the window, I watched her storm back to my old house, tripping in her designer heels. That was awesome, Avril whispered. My phone buzzed. A text from Kirk. Heads up, Caleb just called a neighborhood meeting about property values. Puppy's renovation plans are apparently causing issues. Want to go watch the drama? I asked Harry and Avril. We settled on my porch with iced tea as neighbors gathered in Caleb's driveway. Poppy stood beside him in a too tight dress, trying to look professional. The proposed changes would modernize the whole street, Caleb was saying, but Mrs. Jenkins from number 43 cut him off. You mean that monstrosity of a fountain? She wants to install the one that violates 3 different HOA rules and the neon pink paint samples on the garage. Mr. Rodriguez added, my grandchildren are scared to walk past your house. Poppy stepped forward. You people have no vision. This neighborhood is stuck in the dark ages. Caleb tell them. But Caleb was staring at his phone, face pale. Through my security camera zoom feature, I could see what looked like another declined payment notification. Meetings over, he announced, abruptly walking inside. Caleb. Poppy ran after him, heels clicking. You promised to support my ideas. The neighbors dispersed, several stopping by my porch for gossip and refreshments. I miss your garden parties, Mrs. Jenkins sighed. Remember last summer's barbecue? I'd spent weeks planning it, making sure everyone's dietary restrictions were met, organizing games for the kids, the kind of effort Poppy clearly found beneath her. Later that evening, Avril got a call from Caleb. Dad wants to know if you have his old business contact list, she said, covering the phone. He can't find Mr. Patterson's number. Tell him it's in the blue folder marked critical contacts in his home office, 3rd drawer down, left side. Avril relayed the message. He says it's not there. That's because Poppy organized his Office last week, I replied loud enough to be heard over the phone. Check the garbage. Through my window I watched Caleb rummage through trash bags in the garage, Poppy trailing behind him. Complaining about the mess, found it. His voice carried through the phone. Elena, are you there? Can we talk? I took the phone. Nothing to talk about, Caleb. Enjoy your upgrade. That night, as I worked on my conference presentation, the sounds of another fight drifted through my window. Something shattered, followed by Caleb shouting about an expensive vase. Should we call someone? John asked, looking up from her laptop. Nope, I adjusted my presentation slides. This is exactly what Karma looks like. Avril appeared in her pajamas. Dad just texted he's sleeping in his office tonight. I hugged her close. You okay? She nodded against my shoulder. Actually, yeah, it's kind of nice seeing him realize what he threw away. Through the window, Poppy's silhouette paced in the master bedroom, jest ing angrily on her phone. I smiled, turning back to my work. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people self-destruct. The conference room fell silent as I finished my presentation. For a moment, I thought I'd completely failed until the applause started. Brilliant approach to corporate crisis management, the panel moderator said, leaning forward. Your case studies are particularly compelling. How soon can you start consulting? I caught John's proud grin from the back of the room. I'm available immediately. 2 hours later, I sat in the hotel bar with John, staring at the stack of business cards I'd collected. 3 major companies had already scheduled meetings. I told you. John clinked her glass against mine. You've been the brains behind Caleb's success for years. It was time people saw that. My phone buzzed. A text from Kirk. You might want to get home. Drama level nuclear. What now? John peered at my screen as more messages poured in. Poppy tried to redecorate your old office. Kirk wrote, found some interesting documents. Caleb is losing it. I grabbed my laptop bag. Need a ride home? The scene that greeted us was better than any reality TV show. Poppy was throwing papers from the second-floor window while Caleb tried to catch them. Those are confidential client documents, he shouted. Then why were they hidden in a secret folder? Poppy screamed back. Who's Amanda and Jessica and Rachel? I recognized those names. Clients Caleb had tried to pursue romantically over the years. I documented every inappropriate email, every questionable meeting, just in case. Mom, Avril appeared beside my car. This has been going on for an hour. Let's go inside, I suggested, leading her and John into my house. Through the living room window, we had a perfect view of Caleb's growing panic as papers scattered across the lawn. Should we help? John asked, not sounding particularly eager to do so. Nope. I poured us all some lemonade, but we should probably film this for posterity. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Morris, this is David from WKPX Radio. We'd love to have you on our morning show to disc your conference presentation. Your approach to workplace dynamics is exactly what our listeners need to hear. I nearly dropped the phone. The radio station wants me as a guest. John grabbed my arm. Say, yes, we'll send a car for you tomorrow at 7. David continued. Our listeners particularly love stories of personal and professional transformation. After hanging up, I turned to find Avril beaming at me. You're going to be on the radio. Apparently I was still processing when another commotion erupted next door. You've been cheating since day one. Poppy's voice carried clearly. I thought I was special. You're making a scene. Caleb hissed. Good, let everyone see what you really are. Kirk appeared at my door with popcorn. Thought we might need this. We watched as Poppy stormed out, carrying a designer suitcase. I'm staying at the Four Seasons, she announced. On your credit card. The declined ones, I muttered, making everyone laugh. Caleb stood in the driveway surrounded by scattered papers, looking utterly lost. After a moment, he turned toward my house, catching us watching, enjoying the show. Elena, he called out bitterly. I raised my lemonade in a mock toast. Karma's a fascinating thing, isn't it? You planned this, he accused, walking closer. You kept those files on purpose. I kept evidence of your behavior on purpose, I corrected him. Poppy finding them was just a bonus. Dad, Avril spoke up, maybe you should focus on fixing your own mess instead of blaming Mom. Caleb stared at his daughter, then at me, finally noticing My conference clothes. Where have you been building my future? I replied. Something you taught me to do, though probably not the way you intended. Elena is going to be on the radio tomorrow, John added cheerfully, discussing workplace dynamics and personal growth. You should tune in. Caleb's face reneged. This isn't over. Actually, it is. I stood up. Straighter now. If you'll excuse me, I need to prepare for my radio interview. You might want to collect those confidential documents before the wind carries them into more neighbors' yards. He turned back to his paper-strewn lawn just as Sprink is activated, soaking everything. Oops, Kirk grinned. Guess the automatic timer still works. Later that night, as I practiced my radio talking points, Avril helped me organize my new home office. Mom, she said, arranging my awards from the conference. I'm really proud of you, like really proud. I hugged her tight, thinking of how far we'd come. Through the window, I could see Caleb in his study, surrounded by wet paper, looking defeated. Hey, John called from downstairs. The radio station posted about your upcoming interview. It's going viral. I smiled, turning away from the window. Caleb's drama no longer interested me. I had my own story to tell, and tomorrow the whole city would hear it. The radio interview changed everything. I hadn't expected the flood of emails, calls, and social media messages from women sharing similar stories. But the real drama was unfolding next door. What do you mean, frozen? Poppy's voice carried through the neighborhood as she stood in Caleb's driveway. How can all the credit cards be frozen? Caleb paced, phone pressed to his ear. The bank flagged suspicious activity. They're investigating possible fraud. I'm your girlfriend. It's not fraud if I use your cards. I sipped my morning coffee on the porch, enjoying the show with John and Kirk, who'd stopped by after hearing the commotion. Actually, Johnny chimed in loud enough to be heard. Unauthorized use of someone else's credit cards is exactly what fraud means. Poppy whirled around. Mind your own business. Hard to do when you're providing free entertainment, Kirk replied. My phone buzzed. Another booking request for a corporate speaking engagement. The radio interview had sparked intense interest in my story of personal reinvention. Mom, Avril rushed out. Your interview video hit 100,000 views. Caleb's head snapped up. What interview? Oh, you didn't hear it. John pulled out her phone. Let me play it for you. My voice filled the morning air. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming successful on your own terms. I watched my husband move his mistress into our home, thinking I'd fall apart. Instead, I moved next door and built an empire while watching his fall. You had no right. Caleb stormed toward my porch. That's private family business. Private? I stood up. Like how you privately moved your mistress into our home, or how you privately used company resources to pursue other women. What other women? Poppy screeched. Oh, honey, I smiled. Check his email drafts folder. He never was creative with hiding things. Caleb's face paled. Poppy, don't. But she was already running inside, designer heels clicking on pavement. You're ruining my life. Caleb growled. No. You ruined your own life. I'm just providing commentary. A crash sounded from inside his house, followed by Poppy's scream. Who's Melissa from accounting? John snickered. Should we sell tickets to this show? Caleb, a man in a suit, approached the driveway. We need to talk about the company situation. I recognized him. James, Caleb's business partner. Not now, Caleb hissed. Yes, now. James looked grim. The board called an emergency meeting. Your recent behavior, the missed meetings, the leaked documents, they're considering a vote of no confidence. Another crash from inside. Poppy appeared at the window, holding Caleb's laptop. Delete these emails, or I'm sending them to everyone. She seems nice, James commented dryly. Real stable. My phone buzzed again. A local magazine wanting to feature my story. As I replied, more shouting erupted from next door. You're just like him, Poppy screamed at James. All of you disgusting businessmen. She stormed out, mascara streaking her face, clutching Caleb's laptop. Give that back. Caleb lunged for it. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Poppy dodged, tripped on her heels, and the laptop went flying straight into the decorative fountain she'd insisted on installing against HOA regulations. My files, Caleb wailed. Everything's on there. Not everything, I called out. I kept backups of all company documents. Standard practice when I was managing things. James turned to me. Interest peaked. You have copies, of course. I was the one who actually ran things while Caleb took the credit. You Poppy launched herself toward my porch. But Kirk stepped in her way. That's far enough, he warned Elena. James pulled out his business card. We should talk. The board would be very interested in your perspective. Caleb's face turned ashen. You can't be serious. Dead serious. James handed me his card. Call my office today. As James left, Poppy collapsed onto the lawn, sobbing. This is all wrong. You were supposed to disappear. Life's full of surprises, I replied, gathering my things. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a magazine interview to prepare for. Mom Avril appeared with her phone. Your stories trending on Twitter. Caleb stared at his waterlogged laptop, then at his crying girlfriend, then at me. Elena, please, we need to talk. No, we don't. I turned to go inside, but you might want to talk to your lawyer. I hear the board takes fraud allegations very seriously. What fraud? Poppy's head snapped up. The kind that happens when someone uses company resources for personal pursuits, I replied. Those emails you found, they weren't just inappropriate, they were illegal. As I closed my door, I heard Poppy start screaming again, this time about lawyers and settlements. Through my window, I watched Caleb sink onto his front steps, head in his hands, while his world continued to crumble. John raised her coffee cup. To karma, we all echoed as next door the chaos continued to unfold, and that's how I turned my husband's betrayal into a six-figure consulting business, I concluded, facing the packed auditorium. Any questions? Hands shot up everywhere. The moderator selected a woman in the front row. What made you decide to move next door instead of leaving? Sometimes, I smiled. The best way to show someone what they've lost is to let them watch you succeed without them. The audience erupted in applause as I stepped off stage. John met me with a hug. You're trending again. She showed me her phone. Your quote about success is everywhere. My own phone buzzed. Avril's text read, SOS Poppy's leaving. It's bad. Need to get home. I told John. Sounds like the final act is starting. We arrived to find moving trucks in Caleb's driveway. Poppy was directing movers to load not just her belongings, but everything that wasn't bolted down. The art stays, Caleb shouted, trying to grab a painting from a mover's hands. It's mine now, Poppy screamed. My lawyer says I can claim it as gifts. Kirk appeared beside my car with his signature popcorn. Been going on for an hour. She's trying to take the chandelier. Mom Avril ran out to meet us. Dad's company board called an emergency meeting. They're voting him out. Through the chaos, I spotted James walking up the driveway, accompanied by two other board members. Caleb, James called out, we need to talk. I'm a little busy. Caleb gestured wildly at the movers, now attempting to detach the dining room chandelier. The board's decision is final, one of the other members stated. We're here to collect company property. Poppy paused her pillaging. What decision? Caleb has been removed as CEO effective immediately, James announced. The board has appointed new leadership. Who? Caleb demanded. James turned to me. Actually, Elena, that's why we're here. We've reviewed your contributions to the company over the years. Your recent success in consulting and public speaking has only confirmed what the evidence suggested. My heart stopped. Are you say? We'd like to offer you the position of CEO. The moving truck went silent. Poppy dropped the vase she was holding. Caleb looked like he'd been slapped. You can't be serious, he sputtered. Check my wife. Ex-wife, I corrected, and I built most of those client relationships while you were busy pursuing assistants. Mom Avril's voice was full of pride. Are you going to take it? I looked at James. The first have condition. Name them. I keep my consulting practice, and I want to start a mentorship program for women in business. Done and done. James extended his hand. Welcome aboard. Caleb stumbled forward. This is my company. Actually, James pulled out some papers. According to these documents, Elena provided you violated at least 15 company policies. You're lucky we're not pressing charges. You knew. Caleb turned to me. You kept evidence all this time. I learned from the best, I replied. Always have a backup plan, right? This is Poppy shrieked, storming over. I left my job to be with you. You promised me you were a receptionist at a gym. Caleb snapped. And I never promised you anything. Wrong move, John whispered as Poppy's face turned purple. A receptionist? She grabbed the nearest object, a crystal award I'd won for Caleb years ago, and hurled it at him. "I'll show you what a receptionist can do." As security guards James had brought stepped in to separate them, neighbors gathered on their lawns to watch. "Should we stop this?" Kirk asked, not moving to help. "Nope," I replied, watching Poppy throw Caleb's golf clubs one by one into the fountain. "Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom, Mom." Avril hugged me. "I'm staying with you full-time now, right?" "Absolutely, sweetie." My phone buzzed again. Another interview request, this time from a national morning show. "Your story is inspiring people across the country." John showed me more social media posts. "You're becoming a symbol for women taking back their power." Through the chaos, Caleb caught my eye for a moment. I saw recognition flash across his face, finally understanding what he'd thrown away. "Elena," he started walking over, but security stopped him. "Save it." I held up my hand. "I have a company to run." As we walked into my house, leaving the drama behind, Avril squeezed my hand. "Dad always said success was the best revenge." "No, honey," I smiled, watching through my window as Poppy threw Caleb's prized golf clubs into the fountain one by one. "Success isn't revenge, it's justice." John raised her glass. To justice, to justice," we echoed as next door Caleb's carefully constructed world continued to collapse. My phone buzzed with another message from James. "Board meeting tomorrow at 9. Ready to change the world." I smiled, replying with one word: ready. The morning show interview was wrapping up when the host leaned forward with one final question. "Elena, what would you say to your ex-husband now?" Before I could answer, a familiar voice called from the studio audience. "How about he says something to you?" Caleb stood up, looking dished in a wrinkled suit. The audience gasped. "Sir, this is a closed set." A security guard stepped forward. "Please." Caleb held up his hands. "Just give me 2 minutes." The host turned to me. "It's your call, Elena." I nodded, curious what he could possibly say to salvage his dignity on national television. "Elena." Caleb moved closer to the stage. "I've lost everything. The house is in foreclosure." Poppy emptied the accounts before disappearing to Bali. "And my reputation is ruined." "That sounds like a you problem." I quoted his words from the day he'd kicked me out. The audience snickered. I deserve that, he admitted, "but I need your help. The company was my life." "No, Caleb, the company was my life. You just took the credit." "I know that now." His voice cracked. "I've been watching you these past months, seeing how easily you've taken over, how the clients prefer you, how everything runs smoother. I was nothing without you." The host leaned forward. "This is better than our usual programming. Remember that client meeting in Toronto?" Caleb continued. "The one where I supposedly saved the deal? That was all you, working behind the scenes while I got the praise. And the Singapore expansion?" I added. "The one you won awards for, your idea, your execution, your success." He stepped closer. "I see it all now. Please, Elena, give me another chance. I'll do anything." I stood up. "Then how about the truth? Tell everyone watching exactly what happened." Caleb swallowed hard, looking at the cameras. "I had an affair with a younger woman, then I moved her into our home, and gave my wife 2 days to leave. I thought Elena was just a supportive wife, but she was the backbone of everything I'd achieved. Without her, it all fell apart. And I prompted, and I didn't just lose my wife, I lost the best business partner I'll ever have, the woman who made me look good for 17 years, while I took all the credit." The audience was silent, hanging on every word while the host broke attention. "This is certainly a plot twist." "Elena, your response?" I looked at Caleb, really looked at him. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair graying at the temples, dark circles under his eyes. The polished executive was gone, replaced by a desperate man. "The company's doing better than ever." I said. "Our stock has doubled since I took over. The mentorship program I started has been featured in Business Weekly. And you know what the best part is?" Caleb waited, hope flickering in his eyes. "I did it all without you." The audience erupted in applause, but Caleb stepped forward. "We were a team." "No, we weren't. I was the team, you were the face." And now I gestured to the studio audience. "The cameras." "I'm both, Mom." Avril's voice called from backstage. "Your next meeting's in 20 minutes." Caleb's face fell at the sight of our daughter. "Avril, please." "Sorry, Dad." She walked past him to hand me my portfolio. But Mom's got a company to run. The host stood up. Well, folks, you've witnessed quite a moment here. Elena, thank you for sharing your story. And sir, she turned to Caleb. I believe security will show you out. As guards approached Caleb, he made one last attempt. Elena, what am I supposed to do now? That's not my problem anymore. I gathered my things, but here's some free advice. Start over, build something yourself this time, and remember karma's always watching. The audience cheered as Caleb was escorted out. John met me backstage, grinning. That was better than any reality show. She hugged me. How does it feel? Like closure, I replied, watching through the studio window as Caleb stood alone on the sidewalk, looking lost. My phone buzzed. James texting about the board meeting ready to announce the international expansion. Mom Avril linked her arm through mine. Can we stop for breakfast? I want to hear all about your plans for the company. As we walked to the car, I caught a glimpse of Caleb watching us from across the street. For a moment our eyes met, and I saw the exact moment he finally understood the magnitude of what he'd lost. You know what? I turned to Avril and John. Let's make it a celebration breakfast. I'm thinking champagne at 9 o'clock a.m. John laughed. Why not? After all, I smiled, stepping into my new life. Success tastes sweetest in the morning. Behind us, Caleb disappeared into the crowd, just another man who'd underestimated his wife and paid the price. The moving truck pulled away from Caleb. Old house, my old house, as the soul old sign swayed in the autumn breeze. I stood on my balcony watching the new family excitedly exploring their purchase. They have kids Avril's age, Kirk noted, joining me with his signature popcorn. Much better neighbors than the drama squad. My phone buzzed with a text from John. Turn on channel 7. Now I flicked on the outdoor TV just in time to see Poppy being escorted through an airport by security. The headlines scrolled in stag influencer arrested in Bali for credit card fraud. Well, Kirk chuckled. Karma's working overtime. Mom Avril burst onto the balcony. Did you see they caught Poppy? I saw. I smiled, hugging her. How are you feeling about it? Honestly relieved. Dad's been calling, by the way. He actually apologized for real this time. The doorbell rang. James stood there with a bottle of champagne, celebrating the Bali news. Among other things, I led him to the balcony where John had just arrived. The board meeting went perfectly. James announced, popping the cork, your mentorship program is being adopted by 3 other major companies. Speaking of which, John pulled up an email on her phone. You've been invited to give the commencement speech at the business school next month. I looked around at my support system, my daughter, my friends, my colleagues, all gathered on the balcony of the home I'd bought. In my moment of defiance, remember when Caleb said I'd never survive without him? I raised my glass. Remember when Poppy said you'd disappear? John added. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Mrs. Jenkins from down the street. Elena, dear, have you seen the news? That awful woman finally got what she deserved. Join us. I waved her up. We're celebrating. Oh, before I forget, she handed me an envelope. This was delivered to my house by mistake. Inside was a letter from Caleb. I almost tossed it, but Avril's curious expression made me open it. Dear Elena, I read aloud. I'm writing this from my new studio apartment across town. Watching you succeed while my life fell apart taught me the hardest lesson of my life. You weren't just the wind beneath my wings, you were the pilot, and I was just a passenger taking credit for the flight. I'm starting over honestly this time. No shortcuts, no writing on anyone else's success. I owe you that much. Signed, Caleb. Wow, John whistled. That almost sounds like genuine remorse. Almost, I agreed, folding the letter. My phone lit up with notifications. The story of Poppy's arrest was going viral, with people connecting it to my recent interviews about rebuilding after betrayal. Mom Avril pointed. Next door, the new neighbors are waving. A woman about my age stood in what used to be my garden, looking uncertain. I waved back. I should go introduce myself, I said, heading downstairs. I'm Rachel. She smiled nervously. We've seen you on TV. My husband and I were going through something similar to your story. You're kind of my hero. Come join us. I gestured to my balcony. I'll tell you the parts that didn't make it to TV. As Rachel shared her story with our growing gathering, I watched the sun setting over the neighborhood. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Caleb: the divorce papers are signed. You're finally free. I'm sorry it took. Losing everything to learn what you were worth. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned to Rachel. The first step is believing you deserve better. The second step, John chimed in, is proving it. And the third step, I raised my glass, is succeeding so spectacularly that your revenge becomes inspiration for others. The group cheered as more neighbors joined our impromptu gathering. Through the window of his old study, I could see the new family setting up their daughter's desk, the same spot where I'd planned my comeback, while watching Caleb's world crumble. You know what's funny? Avril said quietly. Dad always said success was about taking control. He never realized you had it all along. I hugged her close, surveying my kingdom, not just the house I'd bought in defiance, but the life I'd built from the ashes of betrayal to new beginnings. James raised his glass to karma. Kirk added to Mom. Avril smiled. To all of us, I concluded, watching the last rays of sun glint off the sold sign next door, and to the power of choosing yourself. As laughter and conversation flowed around me, I smiled, knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's becoming the person you were always meant to be.
Thank you for watching Elena's story until the end. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share, and subscribe for more untold realities.